don't have a weight loss problem. We have a weight regain problem. People lose weight, then they relax. You're going to gain all that weight back. It's really about getting your body to adapt to your new normal.
How long for a set point to become new set point?
It takes a lot of work to reset your set point, but it still takes work to stay there. In the end, that's why you're not losing weight.
Your muscle mastery program is a year long.
Some transformation may take a year, some 2 years, some 6 months. It's not just getting there, it's learning how to stay there. And the whole point of it is to give people the education to be able to do this on their own forever.
Welcome back to another episode of Rebel Weight Loss and Lifestyle. I'm your host, Cristy Code Red, author, entrepreneur, retired professional boxer. I've got Jeff Later, IFBB Pro, back on the program. And, entrepreneur, you've coached thousands, close to 8,000 clients through success. You've been in this industry many years, and you know a lot about a lot in life, in this business, in weight loss, in lifestyle clients and competitors, everything. You've lived life. I'm anxious to dive right in. In fact, we were talking before I hit the record button, and we started to talk about this, and I said, no, don't say anything. I want let's just talk about it on the podcast. And today, guys, we're talking about resetting your set point. And I got to tell you right off the bat, I do not know a lot about this. Admittedly, I'm going to have to lean on Jeff a lot during this podcast to teach me and to teach you about this subject, because Jeff, we just don't talk about this a lot, do we?
No, it's something that is not widely understood. First of all, thank you for having me on the podcast. And my voice sounds different, I think, every time I get on here. I have my normal voice, and then the last time we did this, I was a little bit hoarse, and this is a different kind of hoarse. So it's the same person. It's me. But yeah, so set point, I don't know if we want to begin and talk about what that even is, but
I was going to say, yeah. Would you take us back a couple of steps, and how does weight loss work? How does the body lose weight? And then walk us through the process of weight loss, losing weight, and then getting to the point where you hit goal weight. Because I think people think when they hit goal weight, the world opens up and it's like rainbows and unicorns and everything is perfect. And that's actually not true. So take us back. How does weight loss how do you lose weight?
Well, we lose weight by breathing it out, actually, but to get technical. But no, I think that when you look at weight loss in general, I think a lot of people have hit their targets before. And the problem is, it's just like what a lot of people say is we don't have a weight loss problem. We have a weight regain problem. We just continue to regain it. But why are we regaining it? What is causing that? And how do we make it so that it doesn't happen so easily? And that really is like, when you look at what a set point is basically where your body is comfortable. Your body wants to maintain homeostasis. It wants to maintain that state of equilibrium, and it doesn't like to change. And when you put your body through what it needs to go through in order to lose weight, you put yourself into a deficit. Your body senses this as a threat to its own survival. It's getting less energy than what it requires. You're burning more calories than you're consuming. This is a threat. Your body has all sorts of self-protection mechanisms that it implements in order to protect itself and stay alive. That's its number one priority, is to stay alive. And so when you put yourself on a diet, you eat less, you start exercising more, or whatever it is, you put yourself into a deficit, and your body, initially, it will respond because there's an energy deficit, and all of a sudden you start to lose weight. And that will continue for a little while if you're consistent, and then all of a sudden you plateau. Why do you plateau? This is something that internally we don't always understand why it happens, but it's actually quite simple and complex at the same time. But like our metabolic rate is at a certain place, and where we're at right now is not usually going to fall under whatever a calculation would say. But let's say your metabolic rate and resting metabolic rate is about 2,000 calories, and you're eating 2,000 calories. So you're maintaining that weight. You're not changing that weight. You all of a sudden drop your calories to 1,500 calories. And metabolic rate's still at 2,000 calories, so there's a deficit, and you're able to lose weight. Then all of a sudden your metabolic rate starts to creep down and meet that 1,500 calories. You plateau. Okay, let's lower the calories again. Metabolic rate comes down again to match it. You plateau. And this is the thing that happens. We just continue to chip away, and our metabolism and metabolic rate follows it. And so we get to the point where basically we can't move past that. And there are strategies that we can implement to overcome that. But that fight against your body's desire to protect itself and maintain the weight that you have worked so hard to achieve is a difficult one because your body is not adapted to it. And so really, when you look at set point, it's really about getting your body to adapt to the new you, your new normal. And that's what proves to be so difficult when you look at like weight change and body transformation.
So do you think the name of the game is to do it so slowly that your body is tricked into thinking that it doesn't know what you're trying to do? I mean, it's just doing it really, really, really slowly?
No, not necessarily. I think it's more of a matter of making sure that you, like, if you have I think what happens so many times is people like will lose weight really quickly, and and then they relax. It's like, oh, finally I can go back to normal, and I don't have to do this anymore. And then what happens? Well, their body takes these excess calories and runs it all the way back, and you're going to gain all the weight back. So how do you make it so that doesn't happen so easily? Well, you have to spend time at that new weight, at that new body fat level, and get your body adapted to it. So like one thing in the bodybuilding world that I would observe, and even just regular dieters, is that when you put yourself through a diet and you start to get leaner, and sometimes when it's like, it can happen at the beginning as well, but for women, their menstrual cycle will get interrupted. It will stop. And a lot of people will think that it's just due to you being really lean, and that can be a factor, yes. But really the main factor, one of the reasons why women stop menstruating when they diet, is because your body views it as an unnecessary use of resources, and it doesn't need to worry about reproduction when it's trying to survive. And so when you go through to extremes like that, your body is not yet adapted to it. But there are a lot of people, and I've worked with many people, and I think you've mentioned this before in past podcasts, where a lot of the women I work with maintain their menstrual cycle, even if they're getting on stage. And that may sound like an impossibility, but it's actually not. And it happens quite frequently, but it's because their bodies are adapted to that lean state. They're not just visiting that state. That's where they live. They stay that lean, obviously not stage lean, but close enough so that the body doesn't freak out and preserve all sorts of resources and shut down menstrual cycles.
So many things I want to ask. So my mind is just racing right now. Like if I've got a client, our average starting weight in Code Red is 220 pounds for our menopausal women in their 50s and 60s. And if I'm trying to get them down to 120 pounds, I tell them, I said, it's a good news, bad news, Karen. The good news is right now you're gonna lose weight, you're gonna get lean. But the bad news is you can't eat like a horse anymore. And so you're gonna have to lower your intake. You're not gonna be able to eat at 120 pounds that you were at 220 pounds. I wish that you could. I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff. Am I wrong here? Because I'm telling them, like, look, you're in a perfect world, in a great world, the way we do things with Code Red, I would love for you to be able to eat that much. You just won't be able to. And so I tell them, do not lower your calories unless it's the absolutely last resort, and let me do it if you're going to do it, because I want to take them down slowly. So am I right here? I mean, you're not going to be able to eat the same amount, or are you saying, no, Cristy, you should be able to eat the same amount?
No, I mean, if there's less of you, then your body requires less. I mean, that's even if you look at like what calculations are, which calculations aren't always the most accurate, but they can give you an estimate, and it's based on how much there is of you, right? So if you're 220 pounds to start, then your body requires a certain amount of fuel to survive, right? And if there's less of you, if there's 100 pounds less of you, then it doesn't require as much fuel as a 220 pounder. So when you look at sometimes like the metabolic rate discussion, some people will even say metabolic damage, but it's not really a damage. It's more of an adaptation. If you lose 100 pounds, your metabolic rate is going to be lower. And that is not a bad thing. That's a normal and natural thing, because there is 100 pounds less of you, and you have less metabolically active tissue. And metabolically active tissue is both fat and muscle. Muscle is obviously more metabolically active, which just means it burns more calories or requires more calories to exist. But yeah, it's going to go down. If you've lost weight, you don't need as much food. I do believe that you can start to build that weight or that metabolic capacity, as I like to say, the food intake up, but it has to be gradual. And I think that's where muscle starts to become a bigger factor. If you start weight training after you've lost the weight, it can help improve your metabolic capacity, and calories can get up. Will they reach where you were at before? Probably not, but that's what got you into trouble to begin with.
Yeah, I like that. That's true. And I used to explain, and again, correct me if I'm wrong here. I don't mind you jumping in saying, now, Cristy, you got the wrong idea here. But I used to tell people, like, look, at 220 pounds, you got, I'm just making this up but when I would do calculations on people, I got 130 pounds of muscle on you. It ain't from doing barbell back squats, Karen. It's from just getting yourself in and out of the car. And people would be like, I'm losing muscle. Well, you're going to lose some muscle because you don't need as much muscle on your frame to carry around a frame that's 100 pounds lighter. Because my clients lose the weight without the exercise. That's just the way we do things at Code Red. If I could script it any other way, I would like my ladies to be weightlifting. They won't. So I stay in my lane of no shakes, pills, diet foods, or exercise. And then later on, we transition them into an exercise program. But normal weight loss, right, is about 25% of the muscle going down as well as fat, right? For someone that does things the way I do it.
Well, I don't know that you can put an exact number on it. I do think that if you're not weight training and you put yourself in a deficit, then you will likely lose some lean mass. There's a way of body composition testing which is a DEXA scan, which is actually X-ray. And when I first started having this done, my main concern was I wasn't necessarily too concerned about what the body fat percentage was. I wanted to know if I was losing muscle when I put myself through a diet. Because for me, as a bodybuilder, you don't want that to happen. So when you look at, for one, testing muscle mass and the increase or decrease, it's a very difficult thing to do, because when you even with DEXA scans, they basically can look at what is fat mass and what is non-fat mass. And then when you look at some of the simpler testing methods like the bod pod or hydrostatic testing, which is underwater, they actually just return two numbers, like fat mass and fat-free mass. And so they keep it very simple. So when you look at non-fat mass or fat-free mass, it's organs, blood, water, muscle, bones, all those things that aren't included in being called fat. So when I did this experiment for the first time, I'm like, am I losing muscle when I go through contest prep, when I'm dieting really, really hard? And it turns out, according to the DEXA scan, I was. However, when you look at the actual numbers, it can be really, really deceiving, because what is non-fat mass? It can be water, blood, organs, all these other things that aren't necessarily muscle. And so what would happen with me is I would lose muscle fullness. And that it's like the water, the glycogen that is stored within the muscle comes down. Now, the reading from the DEXA scan, which is very detailed, it's the most detailed outcome you can get from any body composition test, makes it look as if you've lost muscle. But if you don't know how to interpret it, you're going to misinterpret it. And it doesn't mean that you didn't lose lean mass. It is possible, but sometimes it's just water loss. So, it is common to lose muscle when you lose body fat. I would say you want to try and preserve it as much as you can. But it happens. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd put a number on it. That's a hard one.
Yeah, it's pretty nuanced. So and that DEXA scan, it's like 36 pages. It's so hard for the average person to try to analyze, and clients come to me with their DEXA scan, Cristy, and I'm just like, dear, my eyes just cross, and I just go, all right, let's look through this and find what we need from it, So I think the question on everybody's mind, Jeff, is, and maybe you can't put a number on this, but in your 20 years of experience of doing this and almost 8,000 clients that have come through your program that you've had success with, how long does it take for them? How long do they need to be at that new number for that set point to become their new set point?
I'm going to give the answer that everyone hates. It depends. Because it kind of does. It depends on how far away from your body's initial set point, how far away that is to determine how much time. So if somebody lost 100 pounds, And they're there for, they go from 100 to 200 pounds for easy math. And they're at 100 pounds for a month. And then they start to relax a little bit and, maybe not be so strict with their food and maybe don't exercise. And all of a sudden after month 1, they're 105. And month 2, they're 108. And they're like, okay, it's not bad. I'm still pretty close, but this will continue. And then after like 2 years, they're 190 again. With almost back to where they were, because it was a very gradual thing. So one thing I always say is like, it takes a lot of work to get to where you want to be, to reset your set point, but it still takes work to stay there. And because if you don't maintain certain habits, if you don't establish a new lifestyle, then why would you stay fit? It's not this problem that you take care of once and then it's just gone. So the analogy that I like to use, and anybody that's heard me before has heard me use this analogy a million times, but I love it. It's like weight loss is like pushing a car. If your car dies and it stalls out, you need to put it into neutral and push it. Now you're stuck in the intersection, like, oh crap, let's push it to get it out of here. Getting that moving initially takes a ton of effort. I mean, your eyes are bulging out, forehead veins are going, and you're giving it everything you got just to get it moving, just to get the tires to turn. And then it does eventually. And then to keep it moving, it doesn't require as much energy, but it still requires effort. Otherwise it's going to slow down and come to a stop. And then what happens sometimes in the dieting process is we hit speed bumps and we screw up, we fall off the wagon for a bit and then we get back on. And this is really the reason why I tell this, or I use this analogy a lot, is because I'm trying to emphasize momentum. Because momentum is very important when it comes to weight loss. And momentum is established from consistency. So if you hit a speed bump and you're not carrying enough momentum, you'll hit it and then you'll roll backwards. But if you are carrying enough momentum, you'll pop over it. It might slow you down a little bit, but you will carry enough speed to go over it. And so that's one of the things I think that it's important to maintain, but you can't keep the car moving forward if you don't continue to push. It doesn't require as much as effort as it did to lose the weight initially, but there has to be a shift in identity, a shift in your daily habits. Otherwise, you're never going to be able to reset your set point.
Man, that's a great analogy. That's very good. So when I don't think that this is the same for you, but I think that off season is so much harder than prep. I find prep to be easy. I think it's fun. I like the structure. I find off season to be difficult, and a lot of my people find maintenance to be a lot harder than the weight loss mode. Do you find that same thing with your clients?
Well, I mean, when you look at maintenance, and like if somebody hits their goal, I think that the urgency goes away, and so. Like even with my extreme clients that do compete, they'll prepare and do everything they need to do and make all sorts of sacrifices and make sure they get it done no matter what leading up to the show. And then after it, the littlest thing will get in their way. And it's just because that carrot, that dangling carrot in front of them has been removed. And so I think that can happen where it's like, we get burnt out in the dieting process, right? And it's just like, I just want to eat some chips, or eat like a normal person, whatever you want to call it. And so, yeah, I think a lot of people do feel that way at all levels. Cause it can be very, very difficult to maintain it.
So then would you say that this is kind of 50% physiological and 50% just the habits and the crap that we loosen the rules a little bit?
Yeah, you could say 50% your body is fighting against you a little bit. But as you know, a lot of this just in general is psychological. It's behavioral. It's, it's who we are. And I think if you went through the transformation successfully and you made the right adjustments to your diet, sure, but to your daily habits, to your relationship with food, to your relationship with your body, to your body image, then then you have a much easier time maintaining it, despite what physiological challenges there are. So yes, physiologically we are battling certain things, but it's a winnable battle. The harder battle, I think, is in your head. And so I would maybe have that a little bit more biased towards the psychological side.
I totally agree with you, because I'm just thinking back on anytime I've reversed and anytime I've worked with people who are coming out of weight loss and maintaining their life in maintenance. It's the bull crap. It's the bull crap. It's the little bit, the bites, the nibbles, the taste. It's the Costco samples. It's too many times at Olive Garden. It's the too many Texas Roadhouse rolls. It's just the too much cheating back to back instead of spacing out your cheating. And it's skimping on your workouts, and it's just not maintaining the program and you can't blame it on like, well, I'm 48 now. Well, like, hold on a minute, Karen, because you were doing great up until this point. And if you're really being honest about the crap you're shoving in your pie hole, most of it, I've pretty much, with myself and others I've seen, if we get down to the brass tacks, it's been their own habits that have slipped.
Yeah, it is. I'm gonna pull an example out that might be really relevant to a lot of people, and it'll probably piss some people off, but I'm okay with that. I think you're okay with that. So when you look at semaglutide, GLP-1 shots, all these different, Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, all these different things that are out there, they have helped a lot of people lose a lot of weight. Obviously, I don't agree with how it's done. I think there's going to be a huge backlash as things start to unfold over the years. But you get people that prior to having taken this, they were like, oh, hormones. My hormones are messed up. That's why I can't lose weight. Well, and then they take this shot and all of a sudden they lose weight. What does this shot do? Its main mechanism of action is to slow down digestional motility. It makes you constipated. That's what it does. It makes it so you don't want to eat. So does it modify hormones? No, I mean, it's a GLP-1, which is, it can modify glucagon, which is like it's the opposing hormone to insulin. And there's really no fat loss magic within that drug itself. It's really just that it makes you not want to eat. And so it doesn't modify your hormones. It doesn't enhance your hormones. So you can have all sorts of hormonal deficiencies or claim that you do. Take the shot and all of a sudden you're like, well, I'm losing weight. Why did you lose weight? Well, because you stopped overeating. That's why. And you had something to help you stop overeating. So was it hormones? Could they be better? Yeah, probably. But you could say that for almost every soul on the planet. But in the end, it's your habits, it's your eating habits, and you are overeating, and that's why you're not losing weight. And we underestimate how much we do the bites, licks, and tastes, because they add up quicker than anybody could ever imagine, because we just, by nature, we underestimate.
Oh, that's a great point. I would love to deep dive about GLP-1 with you later on a different podcast, because I get asked this question all the time. And I mean, people just want to, it's a crutch. Like we call it the workaround in Code Red. So your muscle mastery program is a year long, and you really prefer people to stay with you for at least a year. And you've got many clients that stay with you for a lot longer. And the reason is, for this reason, isn't it? To help them with to reset their set point, to help them with their lifestyle, to make this a new lifestyle. And you find the best results with people that stay with you the longest. It's the weight loss, 3-4 months that gets them to their goal. And then the rest of the time, it's just teaching them how to maintain.
Well, I think it's about going through all the seasons, and experiencing hardships and challenges and setbacks that we're all definitely going to face, and some people's transformation may take a year. Some may take 2 years. Some may take 6 months. But I think as a part of the transformation, it's not just getting there. It's learning how to stay there. And that's what I think is missing so often in the fitness world, is people aren't really learning habits. They're not really learning about nutrition. They're not making any significant permanent changes. They're just doing something for a little while, which can get them a short-term result before it goes back to how they used to be. So I actually, even this year in 2025, have rolled out a new 12-month curriculum. And the whole point of it is to give people the education and the tools and resources to be able to do this on their own forever. So that they have a new normal. And it doesn't feel uncomfortable to be there. It's not a difficult thing where people are like, oh my gosh, I don't know how you live like that. Or like, it's easy. It's just who they are. And so it's a shift in identity, as you know, James Clear talks about when he talks about true habit formation. It's an identity shift. And that's what we're trying to accomplish with everybody.
Is that also your muscle mastery program, or is that a different program?
It's the muscle mastery program. Yep. I mean, the psychological is a big part of it. I think without that, you're not going to be able to experience any long-term change. I mean, sometimes it happens with, you know, because before we started doing this, you know, we would just focus on the basics, the diet and nutrition and exercise, and some people would pick it up, but a lot of people would, they get a great result and then they come back a year later and I'm like, what happened? I'm like, oh, I gained it all back. I'm like, okay, this is a problem. Let's figure this out. And so that's why we had to change our approach and enhance the education side of things.
So obviously, as you know, with Code Red, we do this without shakes, pills, diet, foods, or exercise. I would always love when people move, the moving part, moving, walking, guys, steps, movement. That's not what we count. I don't count that in, but it's really, really good for you. But Jeff, you see people that do this, like they'll say to me, like, I'm at 18,000 steps a day. And I go, dear God, like that's your new baseline. What am I going to do with that? Take you up to 21,000, 22,000 steps a day. And so we definitely want to get the most with the least amount of effort. That way we can go up from there if we need to.
Yeah. I mean, I think so many times people start out by just jumping into the deep end and they want quick results. So they're like, well, I can do anything for a month. And so they'll start doing 2 hours of cardio a day and just cut their food down to like as low as they can possibly tolerate. And that will get them an outcome initially, but then you have nowhere to go. And that's the problem. What you see with so many different, short-term diets that people do is that they don't have a plan of action going forward. Because I think it's okay to kind of jumpstart and do something fairly aggressive initially, as long as you have a plan after. But most people don't, and that proves to be a problem.
Resetting your set point. It's definitely something but we just don't talk about. We just don't look long term. We look at that, but it's so funny when you get on that scale and that number, that magic number, and you think that the heavens are going to open up and that the tears, the Tibetan monks, and like you think that everything is going to line up perfectly in your life when you step on the scale and you see that perfect little number, and it just doesn't. You still have to go. You got to walk the dog. Life goes on. You still have to do laundry. You got to get to work, and people don't look at the goal after the goal. They don't look at long term. They don't see what life's going to be like after they hit that magic number, or after they hit that magic body fat percentage, or after they get off the stage. That's why we have a lot of what is it called, post-show blues.
Yeah.
Did you ever experience post-show blues?
I did. And it's actually, it was something I was discussing this morning. I sent a Marco Polo to a client because she's in that mode. Competed just about a month ago and kind of going through the post-show blues phase. If you don't mind, I have another analogy that might help reflect or illustrate what the set point resistance is like.
Yes,
so
please.
If you think of dieting, like, I always say a rubber band, but it's almost like a slingshot. So let's say you have like a gigantic rubber band and there's a post on each side and you're pushing against that rubber band. Initially, the resistance isn't too bad, right? It's pretty easy to move it because, losing that initial weight is not too hard. And you keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and you get more resistance and more resistance and more resistance, and it gets really, really hard. And again, this is where if you do screw up, it'll fling you backwards, right? If you fall off the wagon, you can regain the 6 pounds that you lost a lot faster than you took to lose the 6 pounds initially, right? But eventually, if you keep the tension on and you keep clawing your way forward, you can continue to make progress, and it gets harder and harder the further you go. But eventually, that resistance starts to relax, and all of a sudden, it doesn't want to pull you back. And now you've moved those posts that the rubber band was on, and you no longer face that resistance because you changed where they are. And that if you look at like the set point it was 200 pounds and now it's 100 pounds, and you face a lot less resistance. And it could be that, like when you look at the set point, it's like some people just have like this sticking point with their weight, or no matter what they do, they always end up right around 150 or always end up right around 200 pounds. That's because that's where your body's comfortable. That's its set point. And so we're trying to establish where that new comfortable level is. Even for myself, like I had different goals where I was trying to gain weight. And I used to be about 165, 170 pounds. And if you look at me right now, I'm almost twice that, right? I mean, not twice, but I'm cruising like around 230 pounds. And, you know, my eating habits now, I kind of eat more intuitively. I don't follow a meal plan. You know, I work out pretty regularly as well, but my body just stays right at 230 pounds. But when I was trying to come up, oh my gosh, I could miss one meal and I would lose 2 or 3 pounds, and it would take me a week to gain it back because I faced so much resistance trying to gain it. My body did not want to do that. And this is what happens sometimes, you know, on the other way, in the other direction when you're trying to lose weight. You know, if you eat a off-plan meal, all of a sudden you gain 2 or 3 pounds and it takes you a week to lose it. So it's the same way. Your body faces, it'll easily go one way or the other, depending on how far away from your set point, up or down. And as we know, it's easier to gain weight most of the time than it is to lose weight. For me, I was kind of a hard gainer, and I know everyone's like, oh, poor you, but it was a big challenge for me to build muscle, and I essentially had to force feed myself for about a decade. But it's that resistance. It's where your body wants to maintain. You have to change the resistance that you're getting. And once you do that and you change your set point, maintaining that new weight, that new body composition is so much easier. But it takes work to do that.
What do you think is a good buffer zone around your goal weight? And maybe you're going to say it depends, but I mean, I like to put a 5 pound. I like people to stay 5 pounds under their goal weight. That way they can flex in a 5 pound range. Do you think I'm being too restrictive? Do you think it should be like 10% of their goal weight that they should be able to bounce around and flex?
I think it's relative to your weight, right? So, if you're putting like an actual number on it, a percentage might be easier, but I would say within, 5 to 7 pounds, if you're between 100 and 120, which is really small, I would say 2 to 3 pounds, because there's less of you, but percentage wise, it's, about the same. So, yeah, I mean, if you find yourself, it's drifting up, then you may need to make some bigger corrections to bring it back down, because again, it can start to build and take off on you if you're not careful. Because as much as your body can get established at a set point, you can change it, and you can go back if your habits aren't maintained.
I know that with my program, I try to put in some pretty clear boundaries with people, and so I say, yeah, you can stay in the maintenance program if you just don't get above 10% of your goal weight, and so if your goal weight's 120, I don't want you flexing above 132. That's a really big jump, and you'll get kicked out of the program if we don't. But we don't let it get to that point. We really try to nip it in the bud before it gets to that point. Jeff, will you tell us the story that you told me offline about your client going to Italy?
Yeah. Well, this was a long time ago, but I had a client that was turning 50 years old, and he had this goal of, he wanted to have a 6-pack for the first time in his life. And to celebrate reaching this, he wanted to do a photo shoot. And, for his 50th birthday, he was going to go to Italy for 2 weeks. And this was back in the day when I used to meet with people in person, and I would test them with body fat calipers and measure their body fat each week. And so, before he left, he tested very, very low. I can't remember exactly what it was. Let's call it 8%, 8.0. And he did his photo shoot, and then literally the next day flew to Italy. Now, I was pretty concerned about this because typically when you put yourself through an extreme type of approach, because get the photo shoot ready, he was very lean, he was shredded, and he looked great. The pictures turned out amazing. But I was concerned because I'm like, if you go from one extreme to the other, you go to Italy and you start indulging on pasta and gelato and, calzones and pizza and all these things, then you're going to gain that weight back so fast. Your neck will break. It will surprise you how fast you can gain it back. And so he comes back 2 weeks later and he meets with me, and I test his body. And for one, he looked pretty normal when he came in. I was like, okay, no fault, no red flag so far. And I test his body fat, and he's up 0.5%. I'm like, okay, and where's your weight? His weight is up 2 pounds. I'm like, well, so did you go to Italy? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, well, did you guys like work out every day? What were you doing, cardio? Like, he's like, no, we didn't go to the gym once. I'm like, well, did you eat? Like, did you experience all the, the amazing cuisine that there is to eat in Italy? And he's like, oh yeah, we tried it all. Gelato and wine and pizza and pasta and everything. We enjoyed it all. And I was like, explain yourself. I'm like, how did this happen? Because if you did all those things, then you should be up a couple percent, maybe 10, 12 pounds. Like this just doesn't make sense to me. And again, I was kind of younger in my career, and he's actually been relatively fit for most of his life, but just had never really peaked. And so he started to explain. He said, Jeff, I liked all these things. I liked the gelato. I liked the wine and the pasta, but I just don't overdo it. I'll try some things, but I don't eat the whole pizza. I'll try a slice. I don't get like a gigantic thing of gelato. I tried it. I basically just kind of sampled stuff, and I ate until I was content, but I didn't eat more than that. And that's really all it came down to. And it kind of hit me at that time. And again, I was kind of younger in my career, and I had not really seen this from anybody else up until this point. And I was like, that's the lifestyle. That's when you have that kind of relationship with food, that kind of perspective on things. That's when you've made that shift, that permanent shift, and you can go and do whatever you want and maintain a certain level of fitness without like doing crazy stuff. Like, oh my gosh, got to bring all my food in Tupperware, and I got to find a gym, and I got to get up at 5 a.m. so I can get my workout in. And there's nothing wrong with that, because some people that's what they like to do. And I have done that, but I don't do that anymore. And I don't get fat as a result. When I travel, I sometimes work out, sometimes I don't. I sometimes bring some food. I never bring all my food anymore. But most of the time I don't. I just try to make good decisions. And so that's really when you look at, and that was where I got taught a lesson by my client, where, I really got to see what it's like to live fit and what the lifestyle truly is when you have that shift.
But you also do moderation. I've been on FaceTime with you, and you've held up a little baggie of licorice, and you're like, I just have a couple of these once in a while when I feel like it. You have moderation handled pretty well.
Yeah, no, I don't really think there's anything off limits necessarily. I think that as long as and this is a part of the education that we provide, because as you start to understand nutrition, you start to understand macronutrients and calories and energy balance in humans, then you start to realize that, hey, it is possible to eat pretty much anything I want to. Now, you can obviously take that and run with it in the wrong direction, but it's more like people will say the 80-20 rule. It's like 80% of the food that you eat should be whole foods, and then 20% can be garbage. And I'm like, well, I don't know that you need to necessarily put a number on it. It's more like, you don't necessarily need to restrict the things that you love, the foods that you love. Because I think once you tell somebody they can't have it, that's when they want it even more, right? And it's more like, well, how can I incorporate this? I really love Australian licorice. How can I eat? I mean, it's just a bunch of sugar, basically, right? Which is, carbs. And so you got to factor that in. But even like alcohol is the same thing. It's just calories, right? And how can you make that work within your calorie budget? And so we teach people how to understand nutrition in that regard, and it makes it so they don't have to restrict, and they can travel, and they can eat cake on their birthday, and celebrate on Christmas, and eat on vacation. So it just makes it a lot more livable long term, because that restriction is what leads to rebound.
You've given us a lot to think about, Jeff. How can people get a hold of you if they want to work with you and they want to go in the direction of the muscle mastery or the later lifestyle, or if they even want to get on stage? What's the best way to get a hold of you?
They can either find me on Instagram. It's just at Jeff Later, JEFFLATER, or they can go to jefflater.com. That has links to all my programs in there as well. And it's a great way to find me. So, yeah, happy to chat with anybody that thinks that might be a good fit.
Well, I appreciate you, as always, coming on here and educating us. I always learn a lot, and I get a lot of great feedback from you when you're on the program. So, guys, we will see you on the next one. Take care, everybody.
Thanks for having me. See you guys.